Have you ever felt like no matter how hard you try to change your life, you always end up back where you started? You make a plan. I'll start waking up early. I'll work out every day. I'll finally stop procrastinating. You feel inspired for a few days. You even start strong. But slowly, that spark fades. And before you realize it, you're back in the same old routine, stuck in the same patterns, living the same story. And then that little voice creeps in. Maybe I'm just not disciplined enough. Maybe I'm not meant to be successful. Maybe I'll never change. But what if I told you the problem isn't you? What if the real problem is the system you've been using? Because here's the truth. You do not rise to the level of your goals. You fall to the level of your systems. That one sentence from Atomic Habits by James Clear has changed millions of lives. And today, we're going to unpack exactly why. This is not just another self-help book. It's a roadmap to transformation, a guide to rebuilding your identity, one tiny habit at a time, a philosophy that proves small changes done consistently can create an extraordinary life. So, get comfortable, because by the end of this video, you won't just understand habits, you'll understand how to reprogram your life. Author background, the man behind the method. Before we dive into the book itself, let's talk about the man who wrote it, James Clear. James wasn't always a productivity guru or a best-selling author. In fact, his story begins with pain, real physical pain. When he was just a teenager, he suffered a devastating baseball accident. A bat swung at full speed, hit him in the face. His skull was fractured, his nose was shattered. He was left fighting for his life. That single moment changed everything. He lost his ability to think clearly, to focus, to even trust his body. The boy who once dreamed of being a top athlete suddenly had to relearn the basics: how to walk, how to study, how to live. But here's where James's story becomes extraordinary. Because instead of giving up, he started building himself back piece by piece, habit by habit. He began small, making his bed, journaling, exercising lightly. Nothing grand, nothing impressive. But over time, those small steps began to stack up. He rebuilt his body. He rebuilt his confidence. And eventually, he became one of the top baseball players in his college. Later, he turned his obsession with small improvements into research, studying psychology, neuroscience, and behavior change. He started writing articles online, short essays about habits and human potential. Within a few years, millions of readers were following his work. And in 2018, he distilled everything he had learned into one powerful book, Atomic Habits. The word atomic means two things: asterisk, tiny, like an atom, asterisk, and powerful, capable of massive energy. And that's the essence of this book: tiny changes that yield massive results. Let's start with the big idea, the heartbeat of the book. Your life today is essentially the sum of your habits. How fit you are, a result of your habits. How successful you are, a result of your habits. How happy you are, again, your habits. What you repeat every day matters more than what you do once in a while. Because habits are not just actions, they are the building blocks of identity. Think about it. Every time you write one page, you're becoming a writer. Every time you work out, you're becoming an athlete. Every time you meditate, you're becoming a calm person. And that's the secret. Habits are votes for the person you wish to become. You don't need to completely change overnight. You just need to cast small, consistent votes for the identity you want. Want to be fit? Start by walking for 5 minutes. Want to be productive? Start by opening your notebook. Want to be confident? Start by speaking up once today. Every tiny action compounds just like money in a savings account. Small habits may not seem like much today, but over months and years, they become unstoppable. As James says, success is the product of daily habits, not once-in-a-lifetime transformations. The habit loop. How habits actually work. Now, let's understand the engine behind every habit, the 4-step feedback loop. James Clear explains that every habit, good or bad, follows the same pattern. 1. Cue. Something triggers your brain to start a behavior. 2. Craving. The desire for a change in your state. 3. Response. The actual habit or action you take. 4. Reward. The satisfaction you get, which teaches your brain to do it again. Let's break that down. Say, you wake up and see your phone. That's the cue. You feel a sudden urge to check notifications. Craving. You open Instagram. Response. You feel a little hit of dopamine, that sense of connection. Reward. And just like that, your brain learns, when I wake up, check phone equals feel good. It becomes automatic. Now, imagine applying this loop to good habits: reading, working out, meditating. The trick is to make those habits obvious, attractive, easy, and satisfying. Those are the 4 laws of behavior change, the foundation of atomic habits. But here's something powerful. You can also invert these laws to break bad habits. If you make a bad habit invisible, unattractive, difficult, and unsatisfying, it starts to die naturally. We'll explore each of these laws in detail in the next part. But before that, let me tell you a story, one that perfectly captures how small habits can lead to massive success. The British cycling story. In 2003, British cycling was a joke. For over a century, they were painfully average. They hadn't won a single Tour de France. Manufacturers didn't even want to sell them bikes, afraid their reputation would suffer. Then a man named Dave Brailsford took over as performance director. And instead of focusing on massive overhauls, he introduced a new philosophy: the aggregation of marginal gains. The idea was simple. If you can improve every aspect of what you do by just 1%, those small gains will add up to something extraordinary. So they started tweaking everything better: bike seats, lighter tires, improved nutrition, optimized sleep. They even painted the inside of their truck white so they could spot dust that might affect performance. Tiny, almost invisible changes. But within 5 years, the British cycling team won the Tour de France. Then they won it again and again. From 2007 to 2017, they won 178 world championships and 66 Olympic gold medals, all because they mastered the power of small improvements. That's what Atomic Habits is all about. Not massive transformations, but consistent evolution. Because when you get 1% better every day for a year, you don't end up 365% better, you end up 37 times better. That's the power of compounding. Here's one of the most profound lessons in this book. Real change doesn't come from setting goals. It comes from changing your identity. Most people focus on outcomes. I want to lose weight. I want to earn more money. I want to be productive. But outcomes are just results. They're the what. Beneath that are processes, the how. And beneath that lies identity, the who. James Clear says, the ultimate form of intrinsic motivation is when a habit becomes part of your identity. Instead of saying, I want to run a marathon, say, I'm becoming a runner. Instead of, I want to stop smoking, say, I'm not a smoker. Because every time you act in alignment with your desired identity, you're casting another vote for that version of yourself. And over time, those votes accumulate into a powerful belief, a new self-image. Your habits shape your identity. And your identity shapes your habits. It's a feedback loop that can either trap you or set you free. The 4 laws of behavior change. The blueprint of habits. So now that we understand that small habits shape everything we are, the question becomes, how do we actually build good habits and break bad ones? James Clear gives us a simple yet powerful formula. He calls it the 4 laws of behavior change. These laws are the DNA of every habit, the invisible code that drives what you do every single day. They are: 1. Make it obvious. 2. Make it attractive. 3. Make it easy. 4. Make it satisfying. That's it. Simple, right? But don't let the simplicity fool you. These 4 principles have the power to rebuild your entire life. Let's take them one by one through stories, psychology, and reflection. Law 1. Make it obvious. Let's start with the first law. Make it obvious. Here's the truth. We don't do what we want to do most of the time. We do what's in front of us. If you see a cookie jar on the counter, you'll probably eat a cookie. If your phone lights up beside you, you'll probably check it. If you keep your guitar in the closet, you'll probably forget you even own one. Our environment shapes our behavior more than our motivation does. So, instead of relying on willpower, change your environment. Design it in a way that makes your good habits obvious and your bad habits invisible. Let me tell you a story that perfectly captures this. The cafeteria experiment. In 2012, researchers at a hospital in the UK did something interesting. They wanted people to drink less soda and more water. But instead of telling people what to do, they simply changed the environment. They added more water bottles to the coolers and placed them near the cash registers. They didn't remove the soda, they just made water more visible and accessible. The result? Within 3 months, water sales went up by 25%. Soda sales dropped by 11%. No motivation speeches, no fancy slogans, just a subtle shift in visibility. That's the power of making it obvious. How to use it. If you want to eat healthy, keep fruits on the counter and hide the junk food. If you want to read more, keep a book on your pillow. If you want to exercise, set your workout clothes where you can't miss them. Your brain follows cues, and every cue you see is an invitation to act. James Clear calls this environment design, the art of making the right behavior the easy, visible choice. And here's a small bonus technique he suggests: implementation intentions. Instead of saying, "I'll work out tomorrow," say, "I'll work out at 7 a.m. in my living room." The more specific you are about when and where a habit will happen, the more likely it will happen. Law 2. Make it attractive. The second law is make it attractive. Let's face it, we're emotional creatures. We don't do what's good for us. We do what feels good. That's why bad habits are so sticky, they give instant pleasure. Scrolling on your phone? Feels good. Eating sugar? Feels great. Sleeping in? Feels amazing. So if you want to build better habits, you have to make them feel attractive, exciting, rewarding, emotionally appealing. At the core of this law is a simple brain chemical, dopamine. Most people think dopamine is released when you get a reward, but here's the twist: it's actually released in anticipation of the reward. That's why cravings are powerful. They're emotional predictions of pleasure. If you can associate a positive emotion with a good habit, you'll crave it more. And the more you crave it, the easier it becomes to repeat. James tells us that habits are contagious. You imitate the people around you, whether you realize it or not. If you spend time with fit people, you'll naturally value fitness. If your friends love reading, you'll read more. If everyone around you is ambitious, you'll start dreaming bigger. We don't just copy behavior, we copy identity. That's why your social environment matters as much as your physical one. If you want to make a habit attractive, surround yourself with people who embody that habit. Make excellence feel normal. To break a bad habit, do the opposite. Make it unattractive. Remind yourself why it costs you, your peace, your time, your energy. Visualize the consequences instead of the short-term pleasure. Because pain can also be a motivator, but only if you attach it to the right behavior. To law, make it easy. Here's where most people go wrong. They believe success is about discipline. But James Clear flips that idea on its head. He says, you don't rise to the level of motivation. You fall to the level of preparation. If you want to build a habit that lasts, you need to make it easy to start and impossible to avoid. Let me tell you a story that captures this perfectly. The 2-minute rule. There was a man who wanted to lose weight, but he couldn't bring himself to go to the gym consistently. So he decided to try something different. For the first few weeks, he would go to the gym and only stay for 2 minutes. That's it. 2 minutes. He'd walk in, lift 1 or 2 sets, and leave. People thought he was crazy. But after a few weeks, something interesting happened. He built the habit of showing up. Once the routine was automatic, he naturally started staying longer. And within months, he transformed his body. That's the 2-minute rule. When you start a new habit, make it so easy it's impossible to fail. Because habits are not about intensity, they're about consistency. James says something powerful here. You don't need to be perfect. You just need to get your reps in. The more you repeat a behavior, the more automatic it becomes. Repetition rewires the brain, not willpower. That's why starting small matters. You're training your brain to trust that the new behavior is safe and rewarding. Law 2. Make it satisfying. Now, the 4th law. Make it satisfying. This is the emotional glue that makes habits stick. Because here's the truth, we don't repeat behaviors that don't feel good. Immediate satisfaction wins every time. Our brains are wired to chase instant rewards. even if they're bad for us in the long run. So if you want to make a habit last, you must find a way to make it feel rewarding right now. Why immediate rewards matter. Imagine two habits. Asterisk, eating junk food, immediate pleasure, long-term pain. Asterisk, eating healthy, immediate boredom, long-term reward. The brain always picks the first one. So, the secret is to find ways to make long-term habits feel good instantly. You can do this by tracking progress, celebrating wins, or creating visible evidence of success. James suggests a simple but powerful tool, the habit tracker. Every day you complete your habit, mark an X on a calendar or journal. Your goal is to not break the chain. That visual satisfaction, that little streak, it's addicting in a healthy way. You see your progress growing, and that fuels you to keep going. Because success is motivating, progress itself is a reward. And just like before, the inverse is true. If you want to stop a bad habit, make it unsatisfying. Tell a friend about your goal and ask them to check on you. Set consequences like losing a small bet if you skip your habit. Use accountability as friction. We are social creatures. We hate letting others down, and that discomfort can work in your favor. If you master these, you can build any habit you want and break any habit you hate. But James Clear reminds us, it's not about perfection, it's about progress. Because habits are not a finish line, they're a lifestyle. Chapter 1. The Surprising Power of Tiny Changes. Imagine two airplanes taking off from Los Angeles, both headed to New York. Now imagine one of them shifts its nose by just 3.5 degrees south, barely a few inches at takeoff. No one on board notices the difference, but by the time they cross the country, one plane lands in New York and the other ends up in Washington, D.C. That's what habits are like. Tiny changes, small adjustments that seem meaningless today, but over time, they completely change your direction. James Clear calls this the 1% rule. Get just 1% better each day, and by the end of the year, you'll be 37 times better. But get 1% worse each day, and you'll slowly spiral downward without even realizing it. That's why small habits matter. They're like compound interest for self-improvement. No one notices the difference in the beginning, but the results are unavoidable in the long run. And yet, here's the challenge. We crave visible results. We want transformation fast, today, not next year. But real growth is invisible at first. It happens beneath the surface, like roots growing underground before a flower blooms. James calls this the plateau of latent potential. You do the work, you go to the gym, you save money, you write every day, but nothing seems to change. Then suddenly, one day, it looks like success came overnight. But what people don't see are the months or years of silent effort that built the foundation. Change doesn't happen linearly, it happens exponentially. Chapter 2. How Habits Shape Your Identity. Here's a truth that most people never realize. Every action you take is a vote for the kind of person you want to become. Let that sink in. When you skip the gym, you're voting for, I'm the kind of person who gives up easily. When you show up even tired, you're voting for, I'm someone who keeps promises to myself. These tiny votes add up, and over time, they form your identity. Most people focus on the goal. I want to lose 10 kilos. I want to earn $10,000. I want to read 50 books. But the problem with goal-based living is that it's temporary. Once you achieve the goal, the motivation disappears. That's why people lose weight and then gain it back, or save money and then spend it again. Because they never changed who they were, they only changed what they did. To make habits stick, you must shift from outcome-based thinking to identity-based thinking. Don't focus on the result. Focus on becoming the kind of person who naturally achieves that result. Say this to yourself. I'm not trying to become a reader. I am a reader. I'm not trying to become healthy. I am someone who cares for my body. I'm not trying to be productive. I am a focused person. When your habits align with your identity, discipline becomes effortless because you're not fighting yourself anymore. You're just acting like you. James shares a fascinating story. When someone offered a cigarette to a man trying to quit, he replied, "No thanks, I'm trying to quit." But another man who had already transformed his identity replied, "No thanks, I'm not a smoker." See the difference? The first person was still identifying as a smoker trying to change. The second one had already become the kind of person who didn't smoke. Change sticks when it becomes part of who you are. Chapter 3. Systems over Goals. James Clear says something that completely flips the traditional idea of success. You do not rise to the level of your goals. You fall to the level of your systems. Let's unpack that. Everyone has goals. Every athlete wants to win. Every entrepreneur wants success. Every student wants to score high. But if goals were enough, we'd all be rich, fit, and fulfilled. The difference between those who succeed and those who don't isn't the goal, it's the system. Goals are about direction. Systems are about process. A goal is to write a book. A system is write 1 page every day. A goal is run a marathon. A system is run for 15 minutes each morning. A goal is get an A grade. A system is study 30 minutes daily. Goals are useful for planning, but systems are essential for progress. Because when you fall in love with the process, you no longer need motivation. The process carries you forward. Here's the secret most people miss. True mastery is when the system becomes the reward. The artist who paints not to sell, but because painting feels alive. The athlete who trains not for medals, but for the joy of movement. The writer who writes not for fame, but for expression. When you love the process more than the outcome, you'll never stop growing. Chapter 4. The Man Who Didn't Look Right. In this chapter, James tells a story that's both eerie and revealing. A woman was working as a paramedic. One day, while on duty, she suddenly turned to her partner and said, "That man over there, something's wrong with him." Her partner looked. The man was just sitting quietly, reading a newspaper. He looked fine, but moments later, the man collapsed. He had a heart attack. Later, doctors confirmed the paramedic saved his life, but when asked how she knew, she said, "I don't know. He just didn't look right." That's the power of automaticity. Habits, once ingrained, move from conscious thought to instinct. You don't think about them, you feel them. That's what mastery looks like when your actions align with your intuition, when your habits become your nature. It's not about working harder. It's about training your subconscious to work for you. Chapter 5. The Power of Environment. Let's revisit an idea we touched earlier because this one changes everything. You don't need more motivation. You need better design. James Clear says, environment is the invisible hand that shapes human behavior. You can have all the willpower in the world, but if your environment is working against you, you'll lose the battle. Think about this. It's easier to eat healthy when your fridge is full of fruits, not snacks. It's easier to study when your phone isn't within reach. It's easier to sleep early when your bed is inviting, and your laptop isn't calling your name. We are products of our surroundings. So if you want to change yourself, start by changing your space. Design it to make good choices obvious and bad ones invisible. James tells a story of a woman who wanted to drink more water. So she placed full water bottles in every room by her bed, at her desk, near the TV. Within weeks, she was drinking more water, naturally no reminders needed. That's how habits work best when they don't require decision-making. Every extra step, every should I or shouldn't I, is friction that kills consistency. Design your world to make the right thing the easiest thing. Chapter 6. The Secret to Self-Control. Now, here's something counterintuitive. James Clear says, self-control is a short-term strategy, not a long-term one. In other words, you don't overcome temptation by fighting it. You overcome it by avoiding it. If you have to use willpower daily, your system is broken. The most disciplined people aren't stronger than you. They just design their lives in a way where they don't need discipline all the time. A clean kitchen helps you eat better. A tidy workspace helps you focus better. A calm environment helps you think clearer. Self-control becomes effortless when temptation never enters the room. Chapter 7. The 2-minute rule revisited. Let's come back to something we mentioned earlier because this chapter takes it deeper. The 2-minute rule isn't just about starting small. It's about creating momentum. When you start something easy, your brain gets a small win. And that win builds confidence. And that confidence fuels the next step. It's like rolling a snowball down a hill. The hardest part is just getting it to move. Once it starts, gravity takes over. So instead of saying, I'll read 30 pages a day, say, I'll read 1 page. Instead of, I'll go to the gym for an hour. Say, I'll just put on my workout shoes. The moment you start, the resistance dies. Because action comes before motivation, not after. You don't wait to feel inspired to act, you act to become inspired. So ask yourself, what's one area of your life that feels too big right now? Too overwhelming? Now shrink it. Shrink it so small that you can't say no. Because once you start, the rest will follow. Chapter 8, How to Build Better Habits in 4 Simple Steps. Let's pause for a second. We've covered a lot so far: identity, systems, design, and the power of small steps. But now, it's time to put it all together. To build habits that actually last. And James Clear gives us a formula so simple, it feels almost too easy. He says, every habit can be broken down into a feedback loop: cue, craving, response, and reward. To build a new habit, you just have to design that loop intentionally. 1. Cue. Make it obvious. 2. Craving. Make it attractive. 3. Response. Make it easy. And 4. Reward. Make it satisfying. That's it. That's the formula for change. Let's make it real. Habit stacking. One of the most powerful ways to make habits obvious is through something James calls habit stacking. It means attaching a new habit to one you already do automatically. Because your brain already recognizes the existing cue, you're just adding something new right after it. Here's how it works. After I current habit, I will new habit. Examples. Asterisk. After I brush my teeth, I will meditate for 2 minutes. Asterisk. After I pour my morning coffee, I will write 1 sentence. Asterisk. After I come home from work, I will put my phone away and read 1 page. Simple. Seamless. Powerful. Because new habits don't grow in isolation, they grow on top of old ones. That's how consistency is born. Chapter 9. The Role of Family and Friends in Shaping Your Habits. We like to believe we're independent, that our choices are our own. But the truth? We are mirrors of our surroundings. We imitate. We absorb. We reflect. James Clear says, we don't choose our earliest habits. We imitate them. Think about it. How you talk, how you eat, how you manage money. Most of it was shaped long before you made a conscious decision. Your environment isn't just physical, it's social. And your social environment can either lift you up or drag you down. The 3 social circles of influence. James describes 3 groups that influence our habits the most. 1. The close, family and friends. What you see daily becomes your normal. 2. The many, your tribe or culture. We conform to what society approves of. 3. The powerful, those we admire. We imitate those we look up to. If you want to change your habits, change your circle. Want to get fit? Spend time with people who train regularly. Want to read more? Join a book club. Want to grow a business? Surround yourself with builders. Because humans crave belonging, and we adapt to fit in. If excellence becomes your tribe's standard, mediocrity won't feel comfortable anymore. Chapter 10. How to find and fix the causes of your bad habits. Here's the truth. Every bad habit you have serves you in some way. Otherwise, it wouldn't exist. Bad habits are not failures of character. They're misguided solutions to emotional needs. Smoking relieves stress. Social media offers connection. Procrastination protects you from fear of failure. So the key isn't to shame yourself, it's to understand yourself. Ask, what am I actually getting from this behavior? What pain is this habit trying to soothe? Because awareness is the first step toward change. James suggests something called pointing and calling. It's a technique used by Japanese train operators. They literally point to signals and call them out loud to reduce mistakes. You can use it for habits too. When you notice yourself repeating a bad habit, say it out loud. I'm reaching for my phone again. I'm eating even though I'm not hungry. I'm avoiding the task I need to do. Sounds silly, right? But it works because speaking breaks automaticity. It forces awareness into a moment that was once unconscious. And awareness is the crack where light enters. Chapter 11. Walk slowly, but never backward. James shares a simple truth. The secret to getting results that last is to never stop improving. He calls it continuous improvement, or what the Japanese call kaizen, small, steady, endless growth. In life, you'll always face setbacks. You'll miss workouts, you'll overeat, you'll procrastinate. But the key is this: never miss twice. One mistake is human. 2 in a row is a pattern. Forgive yourself for falling off track and gently step back into motion. Progress is not a straight line. It's a spiral, looping upward, slowly, beautifully. The 1% mindset. So the next time you fail, ask yourself, what's the smallest improvement I can make right now? Not perfection, just progress. Because that 1%, that one small act of self-respect, that's how you rebuild momentum. Chapter 12. The Law of Least Effort. Humans are wired to follow the path of least resistance. We always choose what's easiest. And that's not a flaw, it's how our brains conserve energy. So instead of fighting this law, James says, work with it. Make good habits easier. Make bad ones harder. Want to read more? Keep your books on your desk. Want to eat better? Pre-cut your veggies. Want to stop watching late-night TV? Unplug the TV after dinner. You don't need more willpower. You need fewer steps between you and the right choice. Chapter 13. The Goldilocks Rule. How to stay motivated in life and work. Now, let's talk about something truly fascinating, the Goldilocks Rule. It says that humans experience peak motivation when working on tasks that are just the right level of difficulty, not too hard, not too easy. When something is too easy, we get bored. When it's too hard, we get discouraged. But when it's just right, when it stretches us slightly beyond our comfort zone, we feel alive. Think about athletes or artists who get in the zone. They're not thinking, they're flowing. Time disappears. They're challenged, but capable. They're immersed, but not overwhelmed. That's the Goldilocks zone. So if you ever lose motivation, it might not be because you're lazy, it might be because your challenge isn't calibrated. Raise the difficulty a little, or lower it a little until it feels just right. That's how you stay consistent without burning out. Chapter 14. The Downside of Creating Good Habits. Now here's something that might surprise you. Even good habits have a dark side. Once a habit becomes automatic, it can also make you blind. You stop noticing opportunities for improvement. You stop questioning your process. You stop growing. That's why even positive routines need reflection. Habits should serve you, not trap you. James Clear says, the key to long-term success is to balance habits with deliberate practice. Automation helps you stay consistent. Deliberate reflection helps you stay sharp. For example, if you're a writer, don't just review your writing. If you're an athlete, don't just analyze your form. If you're a business owner, don't just evaluate the system. The best never settle. They turn habits into mastery. Chapter 15. The Secret to Results That Last. And now, we arrive at the final idea, the soul of atomic habits. James Clear writes, the secret to getting results that last is to never stop making improvements. Because habits aren't about reaching perfection, they're about becoming someone who grows forever. The goal is not to run a marathon. The goal is to become a runner. The goal is not to write a book. The goal is to become a writer. The goal is not to meditate once. The goal is to become a calm person. It's about identity. It's about transformation. You're not chasing success anymore. You're embodying it. James's quote that says it all. You do not need to be perfect. You just need to be better than you were yesterday. That's the heartbeat of Atomic Habits. The reason this book has changed millions of lives. Because it's not about radical change, it's about real change. The kind that lasts. The kind that compounds quietly. The kind that builds a life you're proud of. At the end of the day, life isn't about grand gestures or dramatic makeovers. It's about the quiet, steady commitment to becoming 1% better in how you think, how you act, and how you love. You don't have to change your whole life today. You just have to take one small step and keep taking it. Because one small habit, repeated daily, can transform not just your routine, but your destiny. Atomic Habits isn't just a book about habits. It's a book about becoming the best version of yourself, one tiny change at a time.